Hi, Eugene.
Hey, Stéphane. Nice to meet you again.
Nice to meet you again.
So, let's discuss in this video one general orienting question is, what's in your view, how does an integral or at least Teal view of types look and feel like?
Hmm. Hmm. Yes, I like the discussion about integral and types. And so we're talking about Myers-Briggs type indicator, which is a model of personality types. And there are self-declared categories, and people can take the test and have a certified coach to validate their type. And then we have integral theory and the integral movement and the Teal stage of consciousness, which is if we take, if we take the view about the three Teal breakthroughs, which is self-management, self-organization, wholeness, and evolutionary purpose. Those three put together allows what we call the autonomous self to emerge and to become the stable central core of someone's life. It also works for organizations, by the way. So the link between those three breakthroughs and the types is that types are a gift of nature, and they are interwoven with our cells. It's in our DNA. There's this red fruit, this red apple, and there's the yellow apple, and they both have a different evolutionary purpose. And that's the same for types. An example is if we have, let's say, we need police officers, we need architects in society, and the way those 16 types are actually spread in by nature, by the evolution, is it's quite actually unpredictable. Like a parent can have children of completely different types. There's no real connections. Most of the time, um, it's it's destiny that chooses the type, and we need all kinds of roles in humanity in our society, and the personality of an architect and the cognitive functioning of an architect will be different than the one of a political figure, or as I said, a policeman, or a chef in a restaurant, or a gardener, and they all will process objects and in their awareness different. They can process abstract objects or touch sense object, making food, for example, or they can work with humans. So the emotional attunement factor is important. And what happens in each type is that we all have all the same cognitive functions, and each type has a preference, a predominance in which cognitive functions will be more efficient. And only in the order it's possible to develop all of them for everyone. It's just we start with a certain, let's say, cone of development, and so that's the evolutionary purpose. You types have type has they have a purpose. They help us being efficient at certain tasks, and they also let's say in the way we relate with each other. Um, if we if a couple or friendship or a group or team is built, then we're going to need someone who's going to take care of the planning, and someone who's going to take care of the other types of tasks. And today, what's important to notify is that Myers-Briggs is not meant to be used as a selection tool. It's more of a let's say an observation tool for the teams that are already existing and the dynamics that are in those teams, So we understand why someone wants to receive the content before the meeting, and someone can flow openly during the meeting. So the integral view, let's say, makes one addition to the base way to see types is that there's the perspectives, the partial truth. Each person, each let's say being has partial truths, and then when we take a step back and then we look at all those types functionings, we're going to see that they will have all different perception of reality, different perceptions of what's happening, and they will connect to the same sense object in around them in their field of awareness of experience, but they're going to have different perceptions of different lines of development that will connect with the same sense object. So the more we have perspective, the more we can let's say have clarity and have precision about what's happening, about or what we're making together. And then the last thing that I'm going to say is the Teal view with wholeness and self-organization. It goes well with the Myers-Briggs types, because those categories are very neutral. There's no type that's good, no type that's bad. There's no negative label opposed on any Myers-Briggs type, like it can happen in some other models. And living in, let's say, living a life where we see and welcome all types, it's really helpful, because there's always a way that we can see, understand and see why someone is seeing or doing things that way, based on where they're coming from, what object they're sensing. So having an ever-present view that all those types exist, it actually makes a nice tool for reconciliation between our perception and what we see around us, and it's very useful to make to make everyone, let's say, partially truthful, or to understand everyone's point of view without making anyone negative or wrong from where they are coming from.
So Ken Wilber, the founder of integral theory, in his the latest works that he has written, he speaks about integral post-metaphysics and the cosmic address, and he usually speaks about the necessity to combine the state of consciousness with the altitude or stage of consciousness. But what do you think, what's the importance of introducing specifically types into this cosmic address, I don't know, equation?
Mm-hmm. Well, yes, that's a very important factor, because types are, when we look at the 4 quadrants, the interior, individual, collective, or exterior, individual and collective, we actually see that those types are very, very, let's say, interwoven with the interior individual, and they're also interwoven in the interaction between us and other beings, other individuals. So behind every connection, behind every communication or interaction, there's actually 2 ways of experiencing the world that are entering in connection. And there are an example is for life partnerships. There's statistically there's some combination of types in a couple that works, let's say, statistically better than others. and it's been used for matchmaking and for to find basically the best possible life partner since I think more than 10-20 years. The AI, the algorithm that we see on some websites are often based on types. So in terms of cosmic address, when we have two beings who have types that are complementary or compatible, then this makes their cosmic address a bit closer. So they, in consciousness or in states or where they are in their life, there are more chance to connect. Type is a very important factor. Another way types are important in terms of a cosmic address. I think in cosmic address you mentioned the state of consciousness and also the stage. There's a book, for example, by Dario Nardi, when he puts every person part of his research program in I think it's an EEG, and there's a correlation between the states of consciousness, the natural state, and types, because types are linked to cognitive functions. So when we look at, for example, there are types like INFJ or INTJ. Their dominant function is introvert intuition, so they're gonna have flashes of intuition coming from their gut, and it happens that their brain, their mind is very often at Zen or at rest. And there are some types like ENTP where their mind will be brainstorming all the time, connecting dots, looking into the possibilities, feeding into their field of view far away. And so the natural state of each type will be influenced by their type. And this also makes the cosmic address slightly different. But I think it's more in terms of where we all start. As for example, after many years of meditation, the types who are very proactive, very let's say very external in their way of expressing themselves or in their way of interacting with the world, they can also develop the internal sensing and this and a way of being with their interior. So it's more like a basis of development than an actual constraint having a type. And then if we look also at the cosmic address in terms of causal non-dual states, the way I see types as made of cognitive functions and the cognitive line of development is that there are channels of consciousness, and there's always let's say vaster and deeper states of consciousness where we can actually experience our own personality, our own set of subtle energies of experience of life. And we can actually in deep states or in intersubjective meditation with people around, it's also possible to experience the way other people experience the world. So types are not fixation, but they are something we flow through.
So in our conversation, you mentioned that in your opinion, type is that which belongs to more subtle maybe field, and when in meditation state you get more in contact with the causal, you are able to become more free, not completely free, but more free of your type, more freedom of expression. Could you speak about that more?
Yes, if you practice, for example, some accelerated state training like Mondo Zen or Big Mind, those that are recommended in Ken Wilber's books, there's actually a possibility to experience what some call deep clear heart mind, where we can witness and actually deeply listen to everything that's happening around us. And then we can take a step back and and observe our own emotions. And for example, someone who's was a deep thinker who has not always access to their own emotion, or just choose to prefer to naturally being thinking or intuition, then they can, from this deeper state, observe another part of their consciousness. And it's very useful because it helps us reclaim our depth, and to touch ways of being, parts of ourselves that we don't always delve in. And an example for me, I think I'm more of an extroverted feeler, so it's being in connection with others. It's let's say, takes me slightly less energy than feeling my own feelings, and going into those deep causal states where there's a vastness and emptiness, then I can actually observe my own emotions and be with them and let them flow through to completion, and transmute any arising of unpleasant emotions, for example. So that's a way to hold the subtle parts of ourselves from a larger state. And it's very helpful for the types, because each type will have a different preference, either feelings or thinking, and they can now see themselves better using states of consciousness.
Okay, and you also say that every type has a hidden structure and also a hidden culture. What in our conversation, that's what you said. What did you mean by that? Maybe the viewers will be interested in that too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the hidden structure, it's the way let's say Myers-Briggs has been built based on the cognitive functions of Carl Gustav Jung. And so we all are feelers, thinkers, sensors, and intuitives. And for example, in our day or in our weeks, and I'm going to take myself as example, I wake up in the morning with ideas, because I'm an ID person, so my type generate ideas easily. So the beginning of my day and the beginning of my week will proportionally give more ideas, and then I synthesize them throughout the day and the week also, and then I share them, and then I collect the feedback or the appreciation, and then I come with myself and I feel my sensation. So this is a structure of how my creation, what I bring in the world, is going to unfold with, and this is connected with my personality, with the way my preferences in terms of cognitive functions are prioritized or aligned. And so that's an example of structure. And there's also a lot of other hidden structures. One example would be even the way we enter in partnership, in a relationship, is also quite imbued by the type. So the things that we're gonna looking for, the information or the way of connecting that we're gonna prefer, is gonna be piloted by our type in many ways. And also our way of being in relationship or ending a relationship, also a way of thinking about our past will be related to ideas. For some people it's going to be more feelings or memories. Those are hidden structure, and there's many, and we talked about the structure of flow for each type, the structure of their flow and how to start their flow and to stay ever presently in flow. It's going to be different. And so the other interesting part is the hidden structure, because of the way we organize our day and our week, consciously or naturally. We're gonna have also preference in the way we organize our calendar, or preferences about is it okay to bring someone new in a circle of friends, or is it okay if a friend brings someone that I don't know, And depending on our type, depending on what we need to prepare ourselves to meet someone new, we're going to have a cultural preference. It can be a personal or group cultural preference that will arise. Like, some people are they recharge slightly better in connection with others. Some people recharge slightly better when they're by themselves. So it will create a cultural preference. Oh, actually, if you bring a friend of yours to my house, I'm happy to welcome them. It's a cultural preference of being an extrovert intuitive, for example. And another hidden culture, I think it's the way we can use the work environment, for example. Some people are, for example, very attuned to the feeling, the feelings and the subtle implicit context that arises between people. And there's a whole way that before meeting someone or entering in business partnership with someone, that we're gonna create a rapport. So introduce ourselves. Also, if there's knowing a little bit more about the person, and the way we're gonna ask our questions to this new business partner, we might ask more about ideas, like what is your vision, or tell me about your family, tell me about where you live. And there's a slight orientation of what we need to make a business a connection with someone that will be, let's say, influenced by our type. And it can be subtle, or it can be very very explicit. And those are internal cultural preference, but they're also connected to the group preferences. So we will find groups where those internal cultural preference will be very common and very shared. And this will create, for example, a group where there's more feelers or more intuitives or more sensors. If you take a group of athletes, their connection to their body, they will the way they will care about their body and their diet. It's connected to introverted sensing or extroverted sensing, and then we're going to find more of this cognitive function hidden as a hidden structure, and the needs for those cognitive functions as a hidden culture inside the group. And when we say hidden, it's more implicit than hidden. Mm.
Okay, thank you. So the last question for this video, but it's related to the hidden culture, I guess, and functions you spoke about, is could you please just say a few words about shadow and its relation to type? And maybe in the future we'll explore it more in depth, but now just a brief kind of pointing out of what's involved in this.
I think I'll start with attaching shadow with what we call in integral theory the primordial avoidance. And I'm going to extrapolate and say every topic that's really full of big emotional intensity that we might avoid. And there's a link between our cognitive preferences. So what takes, what's efficient for us to be with, and what's very inefficient. And for example, I used to, I think before I found practice that made it happy for me, I used to lose a lot of energy making my accounting or my taxes. And so because my system is a little bit less efficient, so I created a whole set of bad experiences of story in my past. And then until I removed those story or those interpretation, and I realized that it's just something that cost me a little bit more energy. So there's when we observe shadow through types, we can see that there's cognitive inefficiencies of certain things for certain types, or cognitive interferences between two types that can if we attach, let's say, ego states or some sort of unpleasant memories or feelings, then it can build into stories and interpretation, and then create a shadow. And so there's a systemic way in which we interact with the world that increases the chances of creating a certain type of shadow for a certain type of personality. And there's something that's quite interesting that I realized. If we take the DSM 5 or 6, and we take the grip experience under heavy stress for the 16 personality types in Jungian theory. So if we take Freud's Freud's originated DSM and Jung's grip experience per personality type, then we realize that there's a link between those let's say mental unpleasantness or personality disorders and those grip experiences, and there's a matching of those categories. And on one hand, it's wow, when I feel in a grip experience, I'm gonna basically withdraw, and on the other side, this person might have a depression. So there's a match between the way each type tend to collapse or overextend. And I notice I'm talking with a lot of seriousness about this topic. And there's a good news, is that if we know our type and if we can recognize our patterns, then it becomes more easy to realize that, oh, actually, it's not that I hate this task or this place or this thing or this person. It's just because for me, it cost me a lot of energy to go there, to make that. Mm.
Oh, very useful, very cool. Thank you, Stéphane. So I appreciate our conversation today, and
yes,
looking forward to our future conversations.
Yes. Thank you, Eugene. Goodbye.
Bye.